Hello everybody, I'm Fred. I'll lead us through the session behind this fairly long title where we'll look at how Tableau has changed things at SpareBank and Forsikring. Before I spend a few more words on the company and myself, let's just look briefly at the agenda. Before we get really started, we need to spend a couple of minutes adding some information to the context. Like, what does the insurance companies do and who are SpareBank really? After that and some more, we'll get down to the real deal, because this is what it's all about. This is what makes being an analyst so fun. Questioning established truths, turning rocks, looking for worms and spiders, and the occasional gemstone, hopefully. So I'll do a live demo of an exact case that came my way a good year ago. In general, I've had to mask a value here and there when I show the real data, edit some aliases, etc., but nothing that changes the relevant stuff, the patterns and the findings. So, as you already might sense, I have more than my fair share of enthusiasm when it comes to Tableau. But what about the rest of the organization? Where are we at and why? I'll show you some dashboards, and towards the end, I'll try to sum it all up for us and share some of the good and some of the bad. Insurance is all about risk. It's all about calculating and predicting the risk of something to happen. And what makes this even more interesting for an analyst is that our attitudes towards risk differ. Some people are forced to take huge risks in their jobs. Others love to take risk in their daily life. Our aim is to give each customer the price that best reflects the risk. So when you go to the store to buy a bottle of milk, for instance, every bottle costs the same to produce. And every bottle has the same price. In insurance, it is different. So both cost and price are variable, which makes analyzing rather complex. SpareBank and Forsikring, which means Savings Bank 1 Insurance, if translated directly to English. We are an insurance company with just about 700 employees. Not surprisingly, we sell insurance through banks with just about 2,000 sales agents out there. Even though insurance companies might have a bad reputation, we are in the top 10% when it comes to overall customer satisfaction across all industries in Norway. We have a 10% market share and we're spread all over Norway. From the Arctic north, where reindeer far outnumber the people, to our capital Oslo in the east, and the southwest where we have our oil wells and what generates our wealth. So when God created Norway, he probably forgot to think about the fact that Tableau eventually would not allow for the elimination of neighboring countries in their maps. So we are stuck with Sweden and Finland in our map views, nice countries, but we don't do any business there. However, map functionality in Tableau in small countries far from the US, that will be another topic, so I'll leave it at that for now. So who am I? I look for answers when people have questions. And sometimes when people have answers, I try to look for the questions behind them. I work as an analyst in a department which has responsibility for growth and profitability. I have 3 toys to play with, and for 2 years now, Excel and SAS Enterprise Guide has gotten much more rest than before. Tableau, however, never sleeps. So that's us. But let's start with going back 2 years ago. In finance, the amount of data is huge. So it's a good place to be if you're a statistician or an analyst like myself, but it's not necessarily easy to transform all the data into information. For years, we worked on building a data warehouse foundation that would make us able to turn data into business-critical information. But still, with much data at hand, it was hard to justify the costs. We built a bigger and bigger data warehouse department, but most people in the organization never saw the data themselves. Just a few of us had the necessary tools and skills to access the data, mainly through SAS, and we were not always close to where the decisions were made. To put a long story short, we ended up buying Tableau in 2012. Tableau beat ClickView clearly in the final. Our goal was to monitor our portfolio better understand the business, the dynamics of it, sharing the insights with the whole organization, and getting rid of multiple truths and multiple reports. We'll spend a good part of the remaining time in Tableau. After all, that's where the magic happens. In the winter 2013, our sales agents were in an uproar when it came to our competitiveness amongst the youngest drivers. We still sell insurance face-to-face, and the customer might be living next door. So the sales agents were reluctant to give offers, afraid of losing business in other product categories because of bad experiences with car insurance. They were afraid of losing face. Things had become critical. Our department was handed this task to analyze whether it was something to their claim, and if so, what we could do with our prices without jeopardizing profitability. When it comes to car insurance, there are a few well-known general patterns. For instance, the more experience you have driving, the less the risk. The more time you spend on the road, the more the risk, etc. This is not exactly rocket science. And for you who are familiar with insurance, in Norway we insure the object, the car, not the customer himself, like it is in other countries. So the general concern was that it is well known that the cars owned by young drivers are bad risk, and that we need the current prices to make any money at all. Was this a myth or was it the truth? Let's switch to Tableau and see if we can find that. So at that moment in time, this product category, car insurance, was fairly new to me, as we had just had a merger and a major reorganization just prior to this. So with just a little product knowledge, after all I do own a car and I know how they look, and with Tableau and some data at hand, I went to the task. Our biggest portfolio data mart have just about 300 million rows and 200 columns. So at this stage, we had already bought an IBM Netezza server to speed things up. That helped a great deal, but with such amounts of data, one still have to have some patience from time to time. So for this demo, I've created an aggregate extract of the data. That is, by the way, a very good way of increasing speed at times. So I started, like one often does, looking at the key variables, profit and number of policies. So let's drag these into the picture. And of course, age must in here, since age is in the center of the issue at hand. Let's just switch these around. And it seems to be some outliers here, so let's add label. And yeah, you see, even though we live and prosper in Norway, there are not that many 100-year-olds driving cars. So let's just filter out the main customer base. You can get a driver's license in Norway when you're 18. So let's start at 18 and go all the way down to, for instance, 85 years old. Okay, so now we're getting at something, a kind of a reversed crocodile mouth or something like that. At least there's a pattern here. Let's spark things up with the colors as well. So we have an age group of customer. So we can quickly see that at least there seems to be some suspicious patterns here. The so-called unprofitable customers, they seem to make us a decent profit after all. Of course, this is just scratching the surface. And more questions came from this, so we dug further into a few interesting variables, just checking for patterns that would make us know more about what's going on here, and so that we eventually could make the right decisions. So let's just start with a new sheet here. We quickly found age of car to play nicely together with age of customer. And of course, we need profit into this picture. And let's just remove the null values and some unknowns. And let's have some circles here as well. Maybe increase the size a bit. So there seems to be a pattern here. And if you change these around, maybe it's a bit clearer. So we can see that the older the car, across for each pane here, the older the car, the more profit in general, across all these different age groups. And there are differences across age groups as well. Some age groups are fairly similar, so for these things, let's just group these. 40 to 60 years old and 50 to 60 years old. These can be grouped, so let's do that. And let's group these ones as well. So now we have 5 distinct groups. When buying car insurance in Norway, one of the questions you tend to get is if there is a young driver using the car. So with me being 33 years old, for instance, if I know that my 18-year-old brother will borrow my car from time to time, I say yes, allow for young drivers. That might increase the price slightly. This seemed relevant to this, so I tried to fit this into the picture without losing the patterns that we already see here. So we have this young driver flag. Let's just add this to color and remove some null values here as well. Of course, I could have removed all the noise beforehand and the null values and so, but in real data, in real life, data is not perfect. So cleaning up the data is a part of the job often. And as we see here, this variable really adds to the picture. It seems to have been some subgroups hidden in the data before we added this dimension. For the younger and the elder groups, it doesn't really change all that much. But especially for the 40 to 60 years olds, there are dramatic differences. Let's just add number of policies to size it to see if there are any substantial groups. And we can see this group down here with young drivers, 40 to 60-year-old car owners with young drivers as well. This group is quite big. It's just as big as the 18 to 23 group. So this is relevant to look further at. It looks like we're losing money on the ones with young drivers. They're down here at the zero profit line. And the older the car, the bigger the difference between the ones with and the ones without young drivers. So what is happening here? A few of you might see this right away. Let me add some hints. I've made an age group description up here. When you are in this age segment, what age are your kids? We're looking at the parents with kid learning to drive group, as we like to call it. So that is a different kind of risk than me having a brother that might borrow the car a couple of times a year. And why the difference across the age of the car? Well, the older the car, the more likely it is that the young adult will use the car a lot. And maybe you'd be more careful driving your mama's brand new BMW than your father's 15-year-old Volvo. What we found here is that we got ourselves high-risk young drivers for a low-risk price, since the car was insured in the name of the parents. We priced ourselves too high in the younger segments, and this probably led us to getting much of the same high risk to the price of low risk. And that's not exactly good business. We feared that the parents put their kids' car in their name to lower the cost substantially. You know, I could go on for this, for ages, but I'll leave it at that for now. I do want to mention, though, that we could easily incorporate one more dimension to the y-axis of this picture without losing sight of the pattern. So this is a whiz with great potential. And one thing is that we found new patterns and relationships in the data that we weren't really looking for. The other important thing is that we could easily communicate this to the rest of the organization. It was so intuitive and clear that it was just, let's do it. So you didn't need several months just to process the issue. Our rough approach had previously made us overestimate the risk of the young drivers, and we probably paid the cost ourselves down here. Now, did this work? One thing is changing stuff. We do that all the time, as does most other companies as well. But getting the intended results seems so much harder. So in a way, this leads us neatly into the next part of the presentation. We will look at a few dashboards and comment on to what extent we have been able to adopt Tableau in other parts of the organization as well. Let's go back to PowerPoint. Because spreading the word of business intelligence to the far corners of the company surely is the hardest part. And in this section, we'll look at a few dashboards that have been fairly successful, I think. It's not all rosy red, so don't you worry. We'll for sure get into a few real challenges as well before we end the day. So let's start finishing off our case with the young drivers. Now we monitor how this change actually plays out. And yes, after we changed our prices last summer, of course, the average price has dropped compared to last year's, and this trend continues. But more importantly, we also see that the acceptance rate, the share of offers that are actually accepted, has increased significantly as well. So moving on, we'll have more than 200 workbooks on our Tableau server at the moment. What characterize the dashboards that we would consider to be of some success? This first dashboard that we are going to look at is to be used in a specific setting, presenting the sales results to the board. To do this, we get very limited space. You know, the board has a lot of things on their agenda. So this shows a few of the real qualities of Tableau. Without too much clutter, we are able to take the temperature on the business in several dimensions. We're now looking at the sales dimension. We have the aggregate activity compared with same period last year, the KPIs, key performance indicators here at the top. We have the sales, we have euro sales, and we have the number of offers. And then we have the development of sales in main product lines across the main regions. Here we have 2014 sales versus 2013, and we have the bars to help us visually see it quickly, whether it's better or worse than the previous years. And this is updated for every week. And we have some yearly aggregates to the right across the seasons. So this should be easy to sell, right? Well, Tableau doesn't sell itself to everyone. To me, it did right away. But one needs to present the dashboard to explain it, because people are used to seeing only the KPIs and maybe a sentence of text to come with it. They still have them, but in addition, they have so much more context and information once they understand what they see. The dashboard we are currently looking at may be the one view with the most hits. And why is that? Of course, having made it myself, I like to think that it's the design, but to be honest, that's only a very small part of it. First, online sales is a topic that many people in the organization are interested in. We haven't been selling online for that many years, so it's exciting to see how we grow week by week, day by day. You know, from the IT director at the top, the sales management, and the rest of us, like myself, we can relate to this. It's interesting. And second, we have fresh data. Every morning there is new data from the previous day. I've made a few decent dashboards, at least I think so myself from time to time, but with monthly updated data, and that just doesn't rock that much. When a month has gone and we have new data, people have forgotten that the dashboard exists. And last, this data will not be found anywhere else. This is the sole truth. When it comes to information distribution, monopoly is such a great thing. This next dashboard holds a different story. Of course, it was important for us to create a dashboard that would suit the needs of the top management. You know, if the management uses Tableau, then it's easier to adopt into other parts of the organization. So says the theory, and you know, so it shows itself that that's the way it works as well. But it was hard getting there. We had to create an Excel spreadsheet as a source, not at all optimal, but it gave us exactly the data that we needed, and it gave us good speed. Then we originally made this much more visual, but we had to change it, so it became a bit more boring really. But it is clean, and it's a lot better than mere tables. Sometimes you just have to do what it takes to increase use amongst the important people, the directors. So here we can add comments as well, and this is used in monthly meetings with the directors to see how the business is across the private market and across the company market. So, after having used Tableau for a while, I was sitting there with some customer survey data, wondering how to make sense of this in Tableau. I tried it from different angles, and it didn't work out very well. Then some Googling brought me into datarevelations.com, where I was giving a lot of tips and found the Tableau Excel add-in. I strongly recommend it. Anyway, in this dashboard, the user can do much of the analyzing himself. He can select companies, year, product lines, and he has a dynamic dashboard that shows the context as well. So overall satisfaction, you can see the distribution of the answers, you can see average score, and you can see how we fare across the market. You can see how the last year was compared to previous year, and you can see the differences across business value as well. And this is one of the areas where I've used Tableau presenting results, where I previously would have used PowerPoint. In 5 dashboards like this, I can present a lot more information than in some 40, 50 slides. And it allows for answering the questions that come up during presentation as well, on the fly, like how many respondents was there and how big is the standard error. It's all just a mouse over away. So I hope this gave you some ideas and maybe some hints about the challenges that we are facing as well. Now it's about time to look at where we stand after 2 years with Tableau. I'll divide this into 2. First, let's look at this from the analyst's perspective. So here's a great colleague of mine, Trygve. And it can't be denied, with the analysts, Tableau has been a great success. It's so well built for what we do. It motivates exploration of the data. So new findings are just one thought and one drag and drop away. It has changed how we work as well, in the way that one can bring the laptop to a meeting and just investigate and discuss issues at hand on the fly with Tableau. No need to create long, dull presentations if you have the right people present and can get straight to the core. Communications should not be underrated. Believe it or not, but many people don't dream about endless tables with numbers, R-squared and confidence intervals. Most minds are much more appreciative of visual communication. And when the facts are agreed upon quickly, one can spend time solving the real issues, like why and what do we do to fix it, instead of arguing about the facts. And this one is a favorite. Tableau gives the analysts more power in their demand towards the data warehouse. And why is that? Well, because we are important and visible contributors of business intelligence. So when the data is missing, it's visible also for the top management, and then more effort is put in to fix things quickly. And I guess there's no need to comment on this last one. Of course, we were having a lot of fun. But we do have some issues as well. Some things that would make our days a lot easier if they were fixed, like a good auto recovery and better maps, Norwegian maps, for instance, and better aligning and sizing in dashboards, and better support for the IBM Netezza servers. So there's a lot of hope to hope for in new versions as well of Tableau. But what about the rest of the organization? This was the analysts. Well, Adoption has been much lower in other parts of the organization. We have faced, and we're still facing, many issues when it comes to adopting Tableau across the organization as a whole. Maybe you've heard some of these before. Where can I find the stuff I look for? Is it there at all? Amongst the 200 other reports available. The lack of flexibility at Tableau server when it comes to folders, etc., is a problem for us. We've tried to create a naming standard, but it hasn't really worked out that well. We spend a lot of time teaching people what is where, just to hear, it doesn't look like an Excel spreadsheet. I don't want the trends, just give me the numbers. All right, I'm exaggerating just a tiny bit, but this is a core issue, actually. I'm used to find my data in the pivot table. Unless Tableau can give me exactly the same, I'm a bit reluctant to use it. At least it takes time to turn them around. And this one doesn't help either, to be honest. We still haven't got all the data available at the data warehouse. So then many will stick to old reports until we get there and can turn off all the old stuff. You're right. I'm busy. Just send me a PowerPoint image and solve my immediate concern. If you're an analyst, I guess you've heard that before. You know, the analysts used to wait for 30 minutes to run a SAS query, 2 weeks getting data from the data warehouse. You could have lunch, go to the hairdresser and have a cup of coffee, and still nothing had happened to your query. So while the 30 seconds wait feels like an eternity for us as well, we can accept it when we know that there are hundreds of millions of rows in play. We even bought, as I mentioned previously, a Netezza server to speed things up, and it has helped a great deal. But the end users are used to opening an Excel spreadsheet or PowerPoint, surfing the web. They expect instant dashboards. More than 10 seconds is just too long for the top management. They won't use it in meetings if it takes more than 10 seconds. And with several views in a dashboard, we often struggle to get below 15, 20, 25 seconds, even with some less data. This is an ongoing theme, though. We strive for faster dashboards. And hopefully we'll pick up a few tips in Haag. Our organization didn't have the resources ready to actually build and administer the reports needed. The analysts have built skills to use Tableau. We've been to visualization courses, etc., Stephen few, but to build high-quality dashboards is actually really time-consuming. Not to mention maintenance, as data sources change, etc. You create what you think is an ad hoc report, and before you know it, you're stuck with it for years. So we have skills, but we haven't got the time. So I have to mention, though, that even though these are negative points, over the last few months, use has increased quite a bit. So we are getting there, I'm sure of it. To try to sum it up a bit, our company has taken a giant leap towards the future. With Tableau, we live in the future. We got the best tools. Now it's just down to our best effort. If I was to give some piece of advice to you who are in the early process of implementing Tableau, maybe like we are, have a year or two of history, or considering it, it would be these points that we have found and that I think might have some general relevance. First, as I mentioned, do not underestimate the need for report builders. One needs dedicated resources. And of course, the closer to the business, the more intelligent reports and dashboards you get. But this just doesn't solve itself like we maybe thought for quite some time that it would. The issue increases as use and demand increases, not the other way around. And the second one is closely related to the previous. We promised much more than we were able to deliver in the beginning, and we got off to a rough start because Tableau does not hide data warehouse issues. Quite the contrary. With data quality issues, there is no quick fix, no magic software. One must get dirt on the hands and solve the root issues first. And I would like to mention a big environment. Create a big environment in the company. After some time, we started to organize weekly BI meetings with the Tableau desktop users, with an open agenda, tips and tricks, best practice. It motivates, it gives good ideas, and it spreads the words across the company. This has been important to us in many ways. I strongly recommend it. And last, changing the way people think about data, reports, insights. It's just a long, hard ride. It's hard work. We are humans. We prefer to do things like we always did. So even a beautiful whiz is not going to get standing ovation if you are missing that one single number that your customer wants. But have no fear. Be patient. In the end, good dashboards will win over the bad. We get there day by day. And with Tableau, we have confidence that we are a part of the future. Thank you all for listening in. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me on the email noted. Thank you.
All right. Let me